Good evening. I'm Joan Dragland, and welcome to Nelson Today. Our special guests tonight are the Mason family of Nelson. And Brent, would you like to introduce your family to us?
Sure. I'd like to introduce my wife, Barbara, and our oldest son, Luke, who is almost 4, and Joelle, who's almost 2 years old, and our newest addition, Christy Alexandra, who will be 3 months in 3 days.
And Brent, you spent quite an interesting summer. I believe you spent 6 weeks in Romania this summer, all in the endeavor of adopting your new daughter, Christy. And I'd just like to, while the children are still on, I'd just like to ask Luke, what do you think of your new little sister, Christy?
Pretty good to have her.
Is it pretty good to have her? It's good to have her in your home?
Do we love her?
Yeah.
Is she precious?
You like her too, Joelle?
She likes to honk noses.
Yeah.
And Barb, how do you find everything settling in?
Well, it's much nicer to adopt than go through pregnancy. I highly recommend it. It's certainly a wonderful experience. We treasure the children that we've given birth to, and we're very thankful for the child that we've adopted. Neither experience, you could trade for anything. It's just been very rich, very full, very challenging, and she's burping. And well, there's a long story to it.
Right, and that's what Brent and I will be talking about tonight. Thank you very much, Barb.
Okay.
Okay, Brent, as Barb said, it's a long and interesting story. I couldn't help noticing you already have 2 healthy, attractive children of your own, a boy and a girl, the so-called perfect family. Why would a couple like you decide to adopt another child in the first place?
Well, there's actually 2 sides to this story, and I'm still not sure which is, the leading story, as they say. But around a year and a half ago, maybe, we began to. First of all, we never ever thought about adopting at all. It never even crossed our minds at all. And about a year and a half ago, my wife had a dream, and in the dream, she was holding a baby in her arms and saw Luke and Joelle beside her. And then after the dream, she thought, well, that's an interesting dream, but I know it's just a dream because I know I'm not pregnant, and we weren't planning on another child then anyways. And then she felt like, though, that this had some real validity to it, and she shared the dream with me, and she just said kind of offhandedly, I wonder if, we're to adopt, because my wife has gone through 2 very difficult pregnancies, and we were just going to take a break from a natural birth. We hadn't decided if we were going to have another child or not. But anyways, and shortly after that, we became involved, became a real deep conviction upon us to really support the pro-life movement. Now, that's a whole other issue that I don't even want to get into, but basically we felt that we wanted to do something to show forth our value for life, and that's when the whole adoption reality just seemed to solidify for us, and we began to take really serious the way that we could show forth our value for life was to take a child into our life and nurture life in that child. So we have friends that are missionaries in the Philippines, and we shared that with them, and they shared with us about the situations on the streets of Manila with street children, and there was orphanages in Manila, and so we wrote to them and asked them if they were open to adopting, to having any of their street children adopted. And they sent back a letter thanking us, but it was their policy that if any children were going to be adopted in the Philippines, they were going to be by Filipinos. And,
Understandable.
yeah, I appreciate that, and I understand that. And so that door closed for us, and we tried a few other avenues, and they closed as well. And we just just kind of left it in the hands of the Lord. And last January 2nd, I think it was, I was watching the Journal, the CBC news show, The Journal, and they had a documentary on that night about the orphanages in Romania. And as that show came on, I just began to weep and cry, and I just felt like I heard a voice say, that's where you're to adopt. And they didn't say anything about adopting or any procedures of adoption on the show. They just showed the situation. So that night I went upstairs and I woke up my wife and I said, I think I know where we're going to adopt a child. And she says, well, yeah, where? And I said, Romania. And she said, Romania? It was really quite funny. But then I just shared with her, you know, the show and what it was doing to me. And she just said, well, if that's, you know, to be, we'll just wait on that. And just within a week, I felt like we had some real confirmations. I think it was a night or 2 nights later, there was a family, or 4 or 5 families from BC who had also seen the show, and had already started procedures towards adopting and finding out about adopting these children.
How did you find out about the other families?
Well, I just saw them on TV
Oh,
too, on the news show. Sonia Patterson was her name that was being interviewed. And so I felt, oh, you know, this is really a real confirmation, yeah. And then the end of that week, we had a group meeting. A few of us get together on Sunday nights and just have a little meeting and share time. And one of the ladies in that group said that one of the real things that has been hitting her all week was moving these orphans in Romania, and that she was wanting to adopt. Now, her husband wasn't as open as she was, but she said that, I just feel like God wants me to somehow help or support in any way I can. And I just felt, again, we both felt that that was a confirmation that we should proceed. So basically that's what we have done. We got in contact with the group in Vancouver area, and
does this group have a name, Brent?
yeah, they're called the Romanian Orphan Relief Fund, and it's headed by Sonia Patterson, and its objective or purpose is not to adopt babies or children. Primarily, it's to bring relief and aid to the situations of the orphanages in Romania. But they have been really spearheading and helping people go over to Romania that are interested or wanting to adopt. And so we got in contact with them, and by the end of May, we were told that it was looking very good for us to possibly go over the end of June or the beginning of July to see if we could adopt a child. They said there is no guarantees, but they felt that they had opened some real doors, and that they felt that it was a real positive step towards doing it if you wanted to take that risk. Felt like we wanted to take the risk, and it turned out fine.
What preparation did you have to do on this end for adopting?
Basically, you have to have a approved home study by a social worker. You have to have, of course, your passport, visas. You have to have your financial statements, medical records, birth certificates, marriage certificates, and criminal records. And the most important thing, of course, is your legalized intention to adopt a child. And so we got all that in a very short time, you know, fortunately, and within a month we were ready to go.
Ready to go over to Romania.
Yeah, and so on July 6th, I flew from Vancouver to Toronto to London, and on July 7th I landed in Bucharest.
And you went over with this group?
I went over with there was 2 groups that went, and I went with the second group. There was 7 of us from all over North America, but mostly from BC, that went over.
And what were some of your initial impressions as you entered Romania?
Well,
It was
it was actually very good for us to take a flight from London to Bucharest, because we flew the official airlines of Romania, which is called Rome airline, and getting on the airplane was a culture shock for us. It was a very old, run-down jet plane. And it looked like it hadn't been cared for at all. It was dirty, and it was like they didn't care how they maintained it. And so we were even wondering if this baby was going to take off. So that was a good culture, or a good initiation into Romania, because when we flew into the airport, we landed on right in this big open field.
That was
this is the international airport in Bucharest, and as we were taxiing back to the airport, we went past. They have this little village right in right beside the airport, and the village looked like something, a very slum part of
really
a town, and it was
poverty-stricken.
It looked very poor. Yeah, that's the word. It was very poor, and we thought, wow, that's something you don't see as much in Canada. And so it was that way. The airport was very disorganized. It took them 3.5 hours to get our luggage out. They only had one carousel
in the whole airport?
Yeah, in this whole airport, and there was 4 other flights that had landed from different parts of Europe, and we were the first flight to land, but we were the last ones to get our baggage out. And it was really funny, because they had all this baggage running on the carousels of other people that were in the other parts of the airport. They weren't even ready to get their baggage yet. We were waiting for our bag. It was a schmozzle.
So were you starting to get implications of...
Yeah, we began to feel that this was
or
not as efficient as we're used to. And I'm not saying everything is efficient in North America, but it sure felt a lot better. And so that was my first reaction. It was really inefficient and disorganized, and as it turned out, that was basically a good, primer
indicator
for the way things are in Romania.
And what about from there? How did you go about finding Christy?
Well, I was involved, as I said, with this group, and this group had, the leaders of this group had organized all of this beforehand and had interpreters waiting for us at a hotel in Bucharest called the Le President Hotel, and it was basically our home for the first 2 weeks of being in Romania. And what had happened was that each interpreter had a group of 5 of us, and then they would send us...
And who supplied the interpreters? The government supplied the interpreters?
No, it was this Romanian Orphan Relief group. They had rounded up all the interpreters, and we had paid interpreters' fees as part of our ticket to Romania. So this was all in the package that we had. And one interpreter would take 5 of us, and we'd go off into different regions of the country. Now, the regions that we went to were orphanages that the Romanian Orphan Relief Fund had already given relief materials to: medicines, clothing, toys, and so they had opened doors to these orphanages, and so we were able to go right into the orphanages, and they accepted us very well. I want to say that they accepted us really well because of the relief that had been given to the orphanages, and it was really a good thing for us to.
How do you think you would have been received if the relief hadn't gone before?
I don't know, but I've heard some real stories. I've heard people have come, all the way from North America, the States, France, Belgium, and tried to get into orphanages, and they can't, because who are you? What do you want? It's important to realize that they don't feel, necessarily that they have a problem. They'll take help, and they'll do with the relief whatever they want to do with it. But they are a proud people, and they don't want people coming to think that somehow they're going to help their situation.
Understandable.
Yeah, if you're there for a while, you do understand their feelings.
Brent, what was your initial reaction when you went into the first orphanage? What did you see, and how did it affect you?
Well, I found personally that my initial reaction going into the orphanages were that they were cleaner than the cities, cleaner even than some of the houses and hotels that we'd seen. They were clean to look at, but they definitely had this amazing disinfectant smell, like
pine salt?
No, even worse than that. It was a smell that I had never smelled before, but I knew it was disinfectant. Now, it seemed clean, the orphanages. What was very disappointing and really sad was that when you went into a ward where the children were, you went into a ward of anywhere between 20 and 30 cribs. The cribs are very inefficient in themselves. Children are getting hurt in these cribs. And because they only have one care worker for each ward, the children were left in their own, pee and poo. The children were, it was all quiet. They were, sensory.
What ages were the children laying in the cribs?
What I saw, first of all, was between 2 and 3. And I saw, after that, I only saw, the youngest I saw initially was 1.5.
So there were no babies in
No,
the orphanage?
I asked about babies, and they said there was no babies. Now, that was just what they said.
Now, were you looking for a baby in particular, or were you looking for a child? Did you have a specific age that
my
you were
wife
looking
and I
for?
felt that we didn't want to change the birth order in our family, and we were looking for a child 1 or under. And that was, basically what we were looking for. Now, everybody had, an idea what they were looking for, but oftentimes that just went out the window because when you see the children, they're so needy, they're so desirable. You have to, really ask yourself now, what is it that I really want? And we found that with many of the people in our group that lots of them came looking for babies and ended up with 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 5-year-olds. More than one. A lot of them had
Took more than one child
yes.
home with them.
And because the procedure is that you have to go find either the mother or the parents of the child when you find a child that you want to adopt, many of the people were, asking for 4 and 5 children just in case they could not get, a consent for.
Did anyone end up with 4 or 5 children?
No, 3 was the most, but one lady in our group went through 10 mothers, and she just kept asking. They said, no, we don't want to give up the children. Again, I have to say that most of these children are not orphaned, they're abandoned. Romania is a very poor country, and most of these children are just unaffordable by their parents, and it's usually just a mother in a family. So
a single parent.
Yeah, and so a lot of them just keep the child in there for 1 year, 2 years until they can afford it. Or I've even heard now, again, there's many rumors that abound in Romania. I heard that some of them kept them in the orphanages until they were ready to go out on the streets and somehow work or panhandle to make money for the family. I don't know if those are true stories, but I've heard them.
So, in your search for your child, how did you eventually find Christy?
Well,
how long did it take you to find Christy?
The first week I was there, the group that I was in, we went to a city called Brela, which is only 15 kilometers from the Russian border. It's right on the Danube River. And it's a city with 5 orphanages, and we went to all 5 of the orphanages while we were there. I asked if I could see younger children, but the youngest they would show us there was, as I said, 1.5 years. So consequently, I was feeling a tension. And I was, you know, there was 3 or 4 children, 2 boys in particular, that I felt drawn to. But I had in my mind still that we didn't want a child that was as old as our daughter or older. So I just kind of waited. And it was tough because everybody in my group was finding children here. And they were kind of saying, well, you know, like, what are you waiting for? You know, you like these children. I said, well, I don't know really, but I'm just feeling that I need to wait. So the difficult thing was that everybody in our group got a child in that first week from Brela, and the interpreter had to work with everybody in that group because there's the procedures to go through. So basically, I was without a child, without an interpreter, unless I, you know, somehow stuck with that group and got a child there. But my interpreter, I think he kind of liked me a bit. He says, look at it. He says, my wife's a doctor in this city called Alexandria, just outside of it. I'll talk to her, see if she will come with you, and maybe you can find something in Alexandria. I said, thank you, thank you. And he did it.
What, she would take you into the hospital?
Well, she would take me to Alexandria, which is another city. It's 90 kilometers from Bucharest. It's
how was it traveling over there? What were the roads like?
That's a whole other story. It's the roads are narrow. This country is the size of Oregon, and it's got the population of Canada. So it's densely populated. Every road you travel, there's, you know, towns, villages all over the place. Geese, ducks, donkeys, horses, cars and trucks all on the road. And there's no, you know, like there's no right of way. It's kind of like whoever gets there first.
The biggest one gets through?
And it helped my prayer life, I can tell you, on those roads. It was honest to God.
What sort of a vehicle did you travel in?
A car. Yes, that was an experience in itself. But anyways, getting back to Alexandria, this doctor wanted to help me. And so she took me to Alexandria, and we went right to the orphanage. And the orphanage director, every orphanage has a director who is a medical doctor, and he is in charge of the orphanage. Well, this medical doctor this day had a meeting with other doctors, and he couldn't see us for an hour. So we had to do something for an hour. So my interpreter doctor took me to where she does her doctoring, her practice, and we met her colleague that was there, and we got talking, and her colleague said, "Are you interested in a baby?" And I said, "Sure." And she says, "Well, I used to work on the maternity ward in the hospital in Alexandria. I'll take you up there." And I said, "Sure."
Sounds good.
So yes, sounds really good. So we went up to the hospital, even, you know, we went right by the orphanage, went up to the hospital. She went up there and was talking to some of the doctors, and she came back and she says, "It sounds good today." And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but anyways, she took me to this doctor, and this doctor said that there was this one young lady who has just given birth, but she wants to send her child to the orphanage. Would you be interested in looking at her? And I said, "Sure." So I went into the nurse's office, and all of a sudden this young girl comes in, and they started talking to this young girl. I don't know who this young girl is. Well, it turns out to be this mother of the child. And the next thing I know, they're taking me into the nursery. You know, we're all going in there. The mother's there, the nurses are there, the doctors are there, and they said, you know, "Let's go." So we walked in there, and they took me right to this little 9-day-old girl, little baby, and I just looked at her, and I just knew that was the child.
This was the one for you.
Yeah, this was the one. And so they said, "Well, what do you think of her?" I said, "She's beautiful." And I said, "Well, would you like to take her?" And I said, "Yes." And so they began talking back and forth, the head pediatrician and my interpreter, and about 3 minutes later they look at me, "Now we want to know, do you want this child?" I said, "Yes." And so they got talking again, and about 3 minutes later again, they turn at me, okay, we want to know, do you want this child? I said, yes, I want this child.
What do you think, why was the hesitation there? Do you think it was because you were a man?
Yeah, I found out later it's because they were dealing with a man adopting a little baby. Mm-hmm. I found out later that they felt very insecure about letting this little child go to me. And so consequently, they were going to say, well, yes, you can have this little baby, but you have to come back in 3 months, you know, hopefully with your wife, you know, to get this child. And so I had to kind of basically sell myself and say, you know, where I come from, this is not, you know, the same way always. We've had 2 children. I work part-time, my wife works part-time. And we've both, you know, nurtured and raised our young children. I've changed many diapers. I've bathed many babies.
And is it not so in the Romanian culture?
No, it's not that way. And so I basically convinced them that, you know, that I was able to do this. And it was the doctor helped a lot because she basically was convinced that I was telling the truth and not trying to give them a con job. So that was a good thing that happened. And so I was able to get the child when our adoption procedure was finalized.
And how did your adoption procedure go through on the Romanian side? How was it working with the bureaucracy in Romania?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer because you know, bureaucracy never seems to be easy no matter what country you're in. I just know that things did not go smoothly for me in Romania as far as trying to get this adoption through. They would begin to tell me that I don't have documents that I did have, and I'd have to show them. I'd have to show them. I have these documents right here.
What documents?
Well, they were saying, well, how do we know your wife wants this baby to come? I says, well, first of all, we've got the intention to adopt with her signature on it. But they said, well, you don't have a power of attorney to adopt. I says, yes, I do. I have a power of attorney. And so I had to convince them that this document was the power of attorney when it was a legalized document. Now, I don't know if they knew that or not, but finally they said, yes, we see here, you have the right documents. And then they tried to stall by saying that you don't have, you know, the official medical records for her. Well, my interpreter knew what to do. She's a doctor.
Right.
We got all the medical records.
You know, Brent, this is a really interesting story, but I'm afraid we're out of time. Would you be willing to come back and do another show with us and continue the story of Christy's adoption?
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Thank
you very much, Brent. And thank you for watching this evening. We hope you'll be able to tune in to our next show, this interesting story of the adoption of Christy from Romania. Good night.